Hello, Ghouligans, and welcome back. This is Suspects and Spirits, and I'm your host, Taylor Seraphin. I hope you are all just doing dandy today. I am in a great mood because, well, the weather here has just been hitting all the spooky spots lately in my soul. It's been raining for a few days, and it smells so good. It smells so good outside. I cannot describe the joy that this type of weather brings me. I have like reverse seasonal depression. You know how most people, I guess, get more depressed when it's gloomy outside, like in the winter. I get depressed when it's hotter than Satan's ass crack outside. There is no way it was this hot when I was a kid. I do not remember it being this hot here when I would come up for sports and stuff. Seriously, in the summertime here, when you open a car door or just like any door leading outside, it feels like the gates of hell just burst into flames right in your lungs. For anyone not from Arizona, I think the best way to describe it is when you open your oven while baking and that heat just like smacks you in the face and suddenly you feel like you're suffocating. It's like that, but for a lot of months out of the year. I haven't counted, but I know it's too many months to live that way. So here I am, just, soaking in all the fall vibes. I actually needed a sweater this morning. It was breezy. It was beautiful. Oh my gosh. Easy, breezy, beautiful, spooky season. I loved it. If we had leaves on our trees, I'd watch them turn colors, but we don't. We have Palo Verde trees here. They die and then they bloom and they make our nose holes really itchy. They do bring bees though, which is, wonderful for the environment, but not if you're allergic. That's not great. Anywho, I hope you're all getting excited for Halloween. My kids are stoked because it's on a Friday. And mama's happy too, because that means we don't have to worry about nothing the next day. No work, no school, no candy hangovers in my classroom. Honestly, I really think they should just cancel school the day after Halloween when it falls on a weekday. It's criminal. Okay, that is criminal behavior to make these kids go to school the day after Halloween. I don't know if any of you have ever been in a school when that happens, but it's an actual zombie apocalypse. There are, the sleepy zombies who just want to grunt and say random shit. And then there are the mindless walkers who forget where they're going. And then, of course, you have the ragers, right? They're just angry to be there. So it's a whole experience. But anyways, on a real note, usually the kids they're pretty tired after Halloween, but they do love talking about their candy and their costumes or the party that their parents had. These kids, they spill all the tea, all the candy, I should say. Can't do anything or say anything around them. Oh gosh, that reminds me, a few years ago, my friend Kylie got married. It was around this time of year. She had a Halloween themed spooky wedding and honestly, coolest wedding ever. It was fucking sick, okay? But I was there as a bridesmaid and there were drinks a flowing, you know, and one of the guests had shots and I honestly don't even know who this person was, but I was like, "Hey, I don't have any kids with me tonight and the night was young." So I was like, "I'm going to do a shot." So there I am, arm up, mid shot, and I hear, "Mrs. Seraphin," and two tiny little hands wrap around my waist, just hugging me. And when I tell you, I choked on that Grey Goose and my throat burned so bad, but I had to smile through the tears and hug this student who watched me throw back a shot like I was a freshman at a frat house. And this sweet baby girl was trying to talk to me. Meanwhile, the fermented potato that I just, ingested was burning my esophagus and my nose and my eyes. And I was like, shit, hopefully her parents are cool. Otherwise, this will make for a very interesting meeting with my principal on Monday. I swear, you guys, I swear being a teacher, it's amazing, okay? But it is, I imagine, exactly how a celebrity feels when they go out in public. Like, obviously not to that extent, but you cannot go anywhere without someone yelling your name or seeing you and then spreading rumors. "Oh my God, I saw Mrs. Seraphin. She had wine. She had wine in her cart." Yeah, I have fucking wine in my cart. Have you met your kids? But I would not be surprised if there was like a TMZ magazine just, about teachers. Like the way these parents gossip is wild. Thankfully, that little one that day, she saw me the following Monday and was like, I saw Mrs. Seraphin at a wedding. And then that was the extent of that story because, all right. Well, now that we are, way longer into this intro than I had initially planned, I will get right into the story for you. I am very excited for this one because it is a place that I've always wanted to go and is said to be one of the most haunted places in America. I know. They all say that. But this one, it's true. Because today we're talking about the Queen Mary. That's right, my friends. Today we step off the pier and climb aboard a ship that still refuses to leave the past behind. So let's get into it. The RMS Queen Mary began life as a pinnacle of transatlantic luxury, an Art Deco palace of polished wood, teak decks, and grand ballrooms. But today, she is a hotel and museum in Long Beach, California. And for decades, she's been whispered about as one of America's most haunted places. On Halloween, that whisper becomes more of a roar. And one of the stories people keep telling is about a little girl, a drained pool, and a single wet footprint. So, today I want to first provide you with a quick history of the ship so you understand how a luxury liner became a floating archive of small tragedies and loss. And then we will get into some of the haunting encounters that people have reported over the years, some of which happened on Halloween, from laughter in empty corridors to the cold spots on the deck and the wet little footprints. All of these stories have shaped how guests and staff experience the ship, especially on October 31st. So, here's a short history about the Queen Mary. The Queen Mary launched in 1936 as Cunard's answer to the Atlantic Glamour competition. For more than 30 years, she ferried celebrities and dignitaries and travelers between Europe and America. Then, during World War II, she became the Gray Ghost, painted a dab gray and then converted into a troop ship. She returned to luxury service after the war, and then with the jet age looming and costs rising, the ship was retired and sold to the city of Long Beach in 1967. She arrived in California on December 9th of that year and has been moored there as a hotel, museum, and tourist attraction ever since. Those long decades packed with births and deaths and accidents and ordinary exhaustion are the soil from which the ship's legends have sprouted. Over the years, the ship's story accumulated some really difficult things. There was a collision during wartime that cost lives, crew deaths from industrial accidents, and those real tragedies provide the plausible scaffolding for ghost stories. Places where trauma actually occurred and where people later feel the echoes of that trauma. Time magazine even named the Queen Mary among a list of haunted places, noting the depth of its lore. But while institutional histories tell us when the ship sailed and when she stopped, the folklore tells us what people feel when they walk her corridors, especially at night. So let's talk about one night in particular, Halloween night. Years after the Queen Mary's final voyage, the ship corridors were alive again. This time with ghost hunters, thrill seekers, and skeptics. The temperature inside the first class pool area felt very heavy that night. The air was really thick and cool, and the smell of salt and iron still clung to the tiles. And that's when one of the ship's guides noticed something a little bit strange: a single wet footprint. It was very small and childlike, pressed into the dry deck beside the long, empty swimming pool. No water had touched that pool in decades. The Queen Mary's pools have been drained since the 1960s, yet there it was, a little footprint leading toward the edge, glistening as if someone had just stepped out of the water. The staff on duty swore up and down that there were no children on the tour that night, but anyone familiar with the ship knew exactly whose footprint it was said to be. And her name was Jackie, or sometimes called Jackie Torrin. the spirit of a young girl believed to have drowned in that very pool during the ship's sailing years. This is perhaps one of the most famous stories aboard the Queen Mary. No one knows for sure how Jackie died. Some stories claim that she slipped and fell, others say that she was playing with another child when tragedy struck. It is important to mention that her name doesn't appear in the ship's official records, which is sort of a mystery in itself because this is such deep lore everyone knows about Jackie, and her presence has been witnessed by countless guests and paranormal teams. Even veteran tour guides refuse to go near the pool area after dark, saying that Jackie isn't alone, that other shadows move just out of sight. The pool in question that we're talking about is the first class or second class pool, depending on which retelling you hear. It is where all of this takes place. Even though the pool was drained, decades ago, Jackie still comes along wanting to splash around and have some fun because after all, she's a little kid. Across all accounts of both visitors and paranormal teams is a consistent description of the same three pieces of evidence. They all hear the sound of splashing when no water is present, the isolated giggle or voice of a child calling for mommy, and most chilling to people who work there are the wet footprints on the tile around the empty pool. Guides will tell you, as many have in published accounts and interviews, that the pool area feels very different at night. It's colder, it's quieter, as if the space remembers the motion of water even when it's bone dry. A long running and often quoted investigation into the ship's phenomena was conducted in the early 1990s by a man named Christopher Chacon. He was a parapsychologist hired to apply a rigorous protocol. Chacon and his team documented thousands of events, and while many were given, a prosaic explanation, a subset remained anomalous. As Chacon put it, investigators assessed psychological, physiological, environmental, and circumstantial explanations and still found a portion of experiences that resisted easy answers. That doesn't prove ghosts for most people, but it does explain why the Queen Mary's pool keeps drawing investigators back year after year. There are even rumors of this pool being a portal. Whether it's to the afterlife or to hell, we're not sure, but some very spooky phenomena happens there. So let's talk about the Halloween pattern and why this matters. On Halloween nights especially, the Queen Mary seems to come alive. Cold spots intensify, doors rattle on their hinges, and those who linger by the pool say that they can hear the drip of water from somewhere unseen, as if someone is climbing out of the deep end. We all know that sound, right? Someone's getting out of the water, you hear the droplets. It's a very distinct sound. Halloween is always, a performance of the uncanny. It's a night built on the idea that the normal rules loosen and the boundary between the remembered and the present thins. But for an already storied place like the Queen Mary, Halloween becomes a pressure test. More visitors, more late hours, more people primed to expect something extraordinary. And each year, the ship hosts something called the Dark Harbor, which is a large Halloween production that blends performance art with fear tourism, which is my favorite thing in the world. That sounds like a beautiful combo. What an incredible, creepy little cocktail. The event, combined with a steady stream of paranormal investigators and guests intentionally seeking a thrill, creates the social conditions for more reports to surface. People report a much stronger temperature drop and more vivid EVPs. And then, of course, the detail that keeps getting repeated in dozens of visitor accounts are those wet footprints at the pool's edge. It is not just the guides who have seen them. Guests have seen them too. And I want to be very explicit here. The Dark Harbor is an organized event that amplifies, the haunted identity of the ship, and some skepticism about ghost stories is warranted. Employees, critics, and skeptics have suggested that spooky tales began in part as marketing or as lively folklore passed among crew and staff. But even critics acknowledge that a surprising number of reports come from the credible witnesses, like long tenured employees, security staff, or tour guides who are familiar with the ship's geography and its usual noises. That's a little bit different from hearsay in an online forum, right? It's not just like people hopping on Reddit being like, this happened to me at the Queen Mary. These are people who have worked there who are very familiar with the ship. So here are some of the recurring elements that appear across independent accounts. There are the phantom splashes, which I mentioned. Visitors report hearing the unmistakable sound of water splashing in the pool room when the basin has been just empty for years. The sound sometimes seems directional, as if someone were swimming near the far wall. And then there's the childlike sounds, sometimes laughter, sometimes voices saying mommy, or faint singing, which I don't know how I feel about that one. That would scare me a little bit. That's giving Tower of Terror, you know? It's raining, it's pouring, the old man is snoring. You guys know what I'm talking about. Usually, this is attributed to Jackie, which multiple guests and some paranormal teams have, they've recorded EVPs that they interpret as childlike voices. And everyone says that this is Jackie. One guide in particular who reported hearing the faint cries of mommy then spotted small wet steps leading toward the changing rooms. The guide insisted that no one else was in the pool area and that the security footage showed no visible person at the time. Accounts of this type appear across several, tour blogs and paranormal write-ups, all of that. But particularly these guides witness a lot of this stuff because they are at that place all the time. Now, the wet footprints, those are without a doubt one of the most visual and, the one that reliably spooks even the skeptical staff. Just picture it like a tiny wet footprint leading away from the pool's edge toward the changing rooms or hallways, despite no water source. That would make even the most skeptical person question what the fuck is going on. These prints are described as clearly child-sized and sometimes shown an outline of a heel and toes as if it's freshly made by someone just, stepping out. The footprints reportedly dry or disappear within minutes. According to all of the guides, all of the people who have witnessed this, the print sometimes appears while groups are nearby. And staff report that it dries shortly after, as if the moisture evaporates or the spirit steps off into the air. But yes, you heard that right. It will appear while groups are nearby. It's almost like tours and things like that stir up more and more of the energy. And then there are the apparitions in period clothing that people tend to see on the Queen Mary. Many guests have claimed to have seen a woman in 1930s swimwear or a fully formed childlike figure in the pool area. These apparitions are described as solid, not, mere lights or shapes or outlines, like a solid person. They look like you and me. And many people have stories like this where they go there and they see somebody that looks as real as you and I do, and then they just vanish. They're gone, which makes me want to go here even more. During Halloween events, there's also reports of the temperatures dropping on the ship. Performers and staff sometimes report sudden cold pockets near the pool area specifically. Electronic equipment, I guess, gets really, really glitchy down there by the pool. And there are a lot of EVPs that are captured during midnight investigations on the ship. This is all phenomena that applies the eerie atmosphere of the dark harbor. Organizers have leveraged the ship's haunted reputation for the event, which further, concentrates witness reports during October. Now, I did track these elements across guide reports, firsthand testimonials, paranormal team write-ups, and local journalism. The convergence is pretty notable. Independent witnesses often describe the same combination of sound, sight, and footprint as the investigative teams do. And that pattern is what transformed a handful of odd reports into a full-blown legend of Jackie, the little girl on the ship. This place is just, bursting at the seams with paranormal activity, and Halloween just intensifies it, especially their Dark Harbor event. I wonder how many people have gone to the Dark Harbor and witnessed a ghost, but didn't realize that that's what they were looking at because it looked like just a regular person. And that's not what people think ghosts look like. Anyways, So, Christopher Chacon's long investigation is often cited by proponents of the ship's paranormal claims. The important part of his work is not just that it pronounces the ship haunted beyond a doubt, it's that after exhaustive controls, some experiences remain anomalous. And those anomalies are what guests keep reporting, especially on nights like Halloween. At the same time, skeptics point out that the ship's history has been mined for stories. A Center for Inquiry investigator noted that many of the ship's so called murders and drownings lack corroborated entries in official logs. That is, there are far more legends than recorded fatal incidents aboard the ship. It's a reminder to separate the documented history record from the cumulative folklore, but for many visitors, the two have become intertwined. Historical tragedy supplies plausibility, and folklore turns plausibility into experience. I'm not all that convinced that certain things didn't happen on the ship just because they're not documented. People cover up things all the time. So I don't know. That's just my 2 cents, my little conspiracy on that. And other than Jackie, there is another famous haunting at the Queen Mary. Well, there's a lot, but I'm not going to get into all of them because this is just a little, Halloween episode. But the one I do want to talk about is called the Cursed Room. This is stateroom B340 on the Queen Mary. It is widely considered as one of the most haunted locations on the ship. It has a reputation for paranormal activity, including unexplained knocking, flickering lights, faucets turning on by themselves, and spectral figures. The room was closed for years due to the number of reports. And by sealed off for years, you guys, I mean 30 years. The room was so frequently complained about that in the 1980s, they ended up just sealing it off completely, like altogether. They said, nope, no one can stay in here anymore. People constantly complain about weird shit happening in there. They pulled everything out of it, like they gutted it, no beds, nothing. And no one was allowed to rent it out or re enter that room for over 30 years, which I mean, that to me kind of proves that there is something going on in that room because wouldn't that be the ultimate cash grab for people who want to experience something extremely haunted? But they people complained about it so much. They were like, "Nope, I'm not staying in here. This is insane." So, yeah, definitely I feel like there's something going on in there if they felt like they had to close it off to the public for that long due to the complaints. Do I wanna go stay in there? Abso-fucking-lutely. Actually, as recently as 2024 is when they reopened it. So, just this past year, they started running, B340 out again to the public. So, you can go stay in there if you would like. You will catch me there whenever I am able to go. Definitely on the bucket list. There are several stories that contribute to the room's haunted reputation, though they are often, unsubstantiated. But again, I mean, you guys know how I just said how I feel about that. So let's look at those claims. Some claim that a man named Walter died there in 1948, while others speak of a man who went mad and died after being locked in the room during a voyage. Which, if that really happened, that is so tragic. Other tales mention a murder in the 1960s where a man killed two women and was later found dead in the room. And again, this isn't documented, but I would also like to point out that if you are trying to get people on this luxury ship, you're probably not going to allow that in the press. And then some other stories suggest that the room's haunted history was created by Disney employees in the late 1980s to entertain guests during renovations. Some of the unexplained phenomena reported by guests in the stateroom, and not just guests, also staff, it's a very wide range of activity. So things like the bed sheets just being ripped off of you, door slamming, footsteps, and objects moving on their own. People have reported flickering lights and sounds. So visitors have experienced the lights just turning on and off and then hearing knocking from inside the walls. And then there are the reports in this room in particular of the apparitions, shadowy figures, and overall just very unsettling vibe, like a really spooky presence in the room with you. almost like you're being watched by something. Which, I mean, if that stuff really did go on in there, like the murders and everything, that's some dark energy. That's dark-sided. I it's it's just a lot of icky energy. Elton and his team, I don't know if any of you guys have looked into Elton since I did the Annabelle episode or if you know who Elton is, but when he and the overnight crew went to the Queen Mary, Elton actually went into room B340 and was doing some devilish shit in there, and some things happened. You guys should go check out that episode. It was very unsettling. Anyways, and today, if you want to go to room B340, you can get the quote haunted experience where guests receive ghost hunting equipment and access to nightly ghost tours, which sounds like something I would love to do and will be doing in the future. For decades, the Queen Mary has drawn in the curious, the fearless, and the grieving. But those who come looking for answers often leave with more questions and sometimes even a photograph or a footprint that they can't explain. Because on the Queen Mary, time seems to sort of bend. The air shifts, and on Halloween night, when the veil is the thinnest, the ship remembers its past. The echo of a child's laughter ripples down the empty hallways, and the sound of dripping water reminds everyone aboard that some spirits never make it to shore. So I will say, if you want evidence in the strictest sense, the Queen Mary, like many other extremely haunted places, would be the place to go to capture that evidence. And like a lot of other haunted locations, it can deliver mixed results. It all just kind of depends on your level of skepticism and how open you are to the paranormal. But if you're just looking for spooky stories that people love to tell about a location, you'll find plenty here. And if you go there on Halloween, you might just find them coming to life in spaces between performers and tourists and guides. To end this spooky story, I wanted to tell you about my mother in law's experience at the Queen Mary. This was years ago, and hopefully I tell it correctly. Nana, if you're listening, correct me if I get something wrong, and then I'll correct it in the next episode. But according to her, my mother in law, she was visiting the Queen Mary with her husband at the time, and they were walking up the escalator from the bottom level of the ship. And they saw somebody coming, so they stepped aside. And from what I understand, this was a very tight space. But they ended up speaking to him and they were like, oh, so sorry, and they stepped out of the way. And the next thing they knew, he was gone. Like, where are you going to go on an escalator? There's one direction, right? There's one way you can go. So they were practically shoulder to shoulder with this person when he walked past them. Like he brushed against them. They spoke to him and he looked just like you and me, just like a regular person. And then he just vanished. He was gone. And they didn't see him the rest of the time that they were there. They mentioned something, I think, to like one of the guides, and they were like, oh, yeah, that happens a lot here. But her story, it's definitely not the first one I've heard like that about the Queen Mary. She saw a whole ass person. And this is why I think most people who claim they have never seen a ghost or maybe don't believe in them, they might just not realize that they probably have seen a ghost. It's just they don't always look the way you think they will. They don't look like what we see in movies. Some hauntings are poltergeisty, like cats knocking shit off bookshelves, and then others are outlined apparitions or they're like shadowy. But man, I will say the majority of the time I hear that they look just like you and me. It's pretty wild. I love stories like this. God, I want to go to the Queen Mary so bad. So bad, you guys. The last time that I had an opportunity, the Queen Mary was still under renovations and they weren't allowing overnight bookings. But now it's up and running again. And oh, you bet your butt talks I will get my little tushy on that ship. I love spooky season. Stories like this just make me so happy. Is that weird? Is that weird? I get so excited. I get like the warm and fuzzies from these stories. Oh, well, you guys, that is the haunting story of the Queen Mary. Now, this was, of course, just a Halloween episode. I will likely revisit this location later on down the line again to give a full rundown on the hauntings that happened there because honestly, this episode barely scratched the surface. I could go so deep into the investigations and all of the other paranormal pals hanging out in there. But for today, that is where we have to end. So come on back next week as we end our countdown to Halloween with a truly insane true crime story. And then, of course, our October Booze Clues episode. If you guys have a story, there's still time. Send it in. I'll try and fit as many as I can into one episode for you. So bring on the spooky. My goal is to release the Booze Clues episode on Halloween. So yeah, fingers crossed that that can happen. Maybe I'll dress up for the TikTok. Who knows? Anything is possible. One day I'll have my own little pod lab where I can get real weird and have all the episodes on video for you guys. Well, maybe not all of them. That's ambitious, but video episodes would be fun. I need the space and I don't have the space yet. Yet. Keyword. Until then, oh shit, I just hit my microphone. I did that last time too. What is wrong with me? It's because I talk with my hands too much. All right. Anyways, until then, go get your spooky sweater. It's up. It's ready for you to buy it. And I have already sold a few dozen of them. So get them while you can. They are a limited edition, and they are super comfy cozy. All of the merch is actually really comfortable. I'm not going to lie. I own all of them because I had to buy them and make sure that they felt right. No one likes a scratchy t-shirt, right? So they're all great. With that being said, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. The reviews, they help a lot. So go write one. And yeah, share this episode with somebody that you want to go to the Queen Mary with, or just someone you think would like it. Even if you don't think they're going to like it. Even if they don't like spooky stuff. Sometimes my paranormal episodes, they go into the history of places. Maybe they like history. I don't know. Share it. Tell them to listen. And if they hate it, hate listening is still listening. So thanks for listening. Share it anyways. Yeah, and go follow the podcast where you follow things. But most importantly, especially with the state of the world right now, be a good human, be a good people. And as always, remember to trust your lizard brain. Until next time, goodbye.